Professor Usman Yusuf, a prominent academic and former government official, has always been a figure of significant influence and controversy in Nigeria. Known for his outspoken views and fearless criticism of the government, Yusuf has never shied away from speaking his mind, regardless of the consequences. In early 2025, he found himself at the center of a national controversy that would shake the very foundations of Nigerian society. The news of his arrest spread like wildfire, capturing the attention of both national and international media. His arrest by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, or EFCC, sent shockwaves through Nigeria. The EFCC, known for its aggressive stance on corruption, claimed they had substantial evidence against Yusuf. However, the timing and manner of the arrest raised many eyebrows. Yusuf, a vocal critic of President Tinubu's administration, cried foul. He vehemently denied the charges, asserting that his arrest was politically motivated. According to him, this was a blatant attempt to silence him and stifle dissenting voices in the country. He claimed the arrest was a blatant attempt to silence him and stifle dissenting voices in the country. His supporters rallied behind him, organizing protests and demanding his immediate release. They argued that this was not just an attack on Yusuf, but on freedom of speech and democracy itself. The incident ignited a heated debate about freedom of speech, government overreach, and the rule of law in Nigeria. Many saw this as a test case for the country's commitment to democratic principles. Was the government genuinely fighting corruption, or was it using the EFCC as a tool to quash opposition? Was this a legitimate crackdown on corruption, or was it a politically motivated attack on a critic of the government? The lines between justice and political maneuvering seemed increasingly blurred, or a politically motivated attack on a critic of the government. The arrest sparked intense discussions in political circles, academic forums, and among the general public. Everyone had an opinion, but the truth remained elusive. The answer, as with many things in Nigerian politics, is far from clear-cut. The complexities of this situation reflect the broader challenges facing the nation. Corruption, political power struggles, and the fight for democratic freedoms are all intertwined in this high-stakes drama. What is certain is that Yusuf's arrest has brought simmering tensions between the government and its critics to a boiling point. The case has become a focal point for broader societal anxieties and has galvanized both supporters and detractors of the current administration. The professor's case has become a lightning rod for broader anxieties about the shrinking space for dissent in Nigeria. As the nation watches closely, the outcome of this case could have far-reaching implications for the future of free speech and democracy in Nigeria. In the pre-dawn hours of a January morning, a team of EFCC operatives descended upon Professor Yusuf's Abuja residence. The details of the raid, as recounted by Yusuf and his family, paint a picture of an aggressive operation. The EFCC officers, according to Yusuf, entered his home without a warrant, catching the family off guard. They were subjected to a humiliating search, their privacy violated. Yusuf was denied the opportunity to change out of his nightclothes, forced to face the authorities in his pajamas. His wife's attempts to bring him a change of clothes were reportedly rebuffed by the EFCC agents. The professor was taken into custody, whisked away to the EFCC headquarters. This marked the beginning of what would become a prolonged and controversial detention. Professor Yusuf spent a total of 30 days in detention, a period marked by uncertainty and frustration. He was held for 6 days at the EFCC headquarters before being transferred to Kuje prison, where he would spend the remaining 24 days. During this time, Yusuf was arraigned in court on a 5-count charge of alleged fraud related to his time as the executive secretary of the National Health Insurance Scheme. He vehemently denied all the charges, pleading not guilty before the court. However, his hopes for a swift resolution were dashed when his bail hearing was repeatedly delayed. The delay, attributed to the presiding judge's ill health, only added to the professor's ordeal. His prolonged detention without bail became a central point of contention in the case, raising questions about due process and the right to a speedy trial. The denial of bail to Professor Yusuf became a focal point of his case and a rallying cry for his supporters. Yusuf, through his lawyers, argued that the denial of bail was a violation of his fundamental human rights. They maintained that bail is a guaranteed right in Nigeria except in cases involving capital offenses or terrorism, neither of which applied to Yusuf's case. The professor's legal team contended that the prolonged detention was a deliberate tactic employed to punish him for his criticism of the government. They accused the government of interfering with the judicial process, using the EFCC as a tool to silence dissent. The delay in the bail hearing, they argued, was further evidence of this interference. The denial of bail served to amplify the perception that Yusuf's arrest was politically motivated, further fueling public debate about the government's respect for the rule of law. Section 5. Yusuf's outcry, silencing dissent. From the moment of his arrest, Professor Yusuf maintained that he was being targeted for his outspoken criticism of President Tinubu's administration. He argued that his arrest was a deliberate attempt to muzzle him, a chilling message to other critics of the government. Yusuf pointed to his history of public pronouncements against what he perceived as the government's authoritarian tendencies. He had been particularly critical of President Tinubu's policies, which he believed were eroding democratic norms and shrinking the space for dissent in Nigeria. His speeches and writings often highlighted the dangers of a government that silences its critics. He warned that such actions could lead to a society where fear stifles free expression and open debate. Yusuf insisted that his right to criticize the government was enshrined in the Nigerian constitution, a fundamental pillar of a democratic society. He accused the Tinubu administration of attempting to create a climate of fear, where citizens would be too afraid to speak out against the government's excesses. His arrest, he claimed, was a blatant example of this authoritarian creep, a warning to anyone who dared challenge the government's narrative. The professor's supporters rallied behind him, organizing protests and demanding his release. They argued that his detention was not just an attack on one man, but on the very principles of democracy and free speech. The international community also took notice, with human rights organizations condemning the arrest and calling for greater scrutiny of the Nigerian government's actions. The case of Professor Yusuf became a symbol of the broader struggle for human rights in Nigeria. It sparked debates on social media, in academic circles, and among political commentators. Many saw it as a test of the country's commitment to democratic values and the rule of law. As the legal battle unfolded, Yusuf remained defiant, continuing to speak out from his detention. He urged his fellow citizens to remain vigilant and to stand up for their rights. His courage inspired many, but also highlighted the risks faced by those who dare to dissent in an increasingly repressive environment. The outcome of Yusuf's case remains uncertain, but its impact is undeniable. It has brought to the forefront the critical issue of freedom of expression in Nigeria and has galvanized a movement demanding accountability and justice. Whether this will lead to meaningful change or further repression is yet to be seen, but one thing is clear: the fight for the soul of Nigeria's democracy is far from over. The Nigerian government, however, vehemently denied any wrongdoing in the arrest and detention of Professor Yusuf. The government maintained that the EFCC was an independent body, free from political interference, and that it operated solely within the confines of the law. They insisted that Yusuf's arrest was based on credible evidence of financial impropriety during his tenure at the NHIS. The government spokesperson, in a series of press statements, emphasized that the Tinubu administration had zero tolerance for corruption, regardless of an individual's social standing or political affiliation. They dismissed Yusuf's claims of political persecution as baseless and self-serving, an attempt to deflect attention from the serious allegations against him. The government urged the public to allow the legal process to take its course, assuring everyone that justice would be served. Professor Yusuf's arrest ignited a firestorm of reactions across Nigeria. The case became a major talking point, dividing public opinion and fueling passionate debates both online and offline. Yusuf's supporters rallied to his defense, organizing protests and demanding his immediate release. They viewed his arrest as a politically motivated attack, a dangerous precedent that threatened freedom of speech and the right to dissent in Nigeria. On the other hand, some Nigerians supported the government's stance, believing that Yusuf should be held accountable for his alleged crimes. They argued that no one, regardless of their stature, should be above the law. Social media platforms became battlegrounds for competing narratives, with hashtags like #FreeYusuf and #NoonAboveTheLaw trending for weeks. The case highlighted the deep divisions within Nigerian society and the challenges of upholding the rule of law in a highly polarized environment. Professor Usman Yusuf was no stranger to controversy. His career has been a roller coaster of public service, marked by both commendations and condemnations. His tenure as the executive secretary of the National Health Insurance Scheme from 2016 to 2019 was marked by accusations of corruption and mismanagement. These allegations were not just whispers in the corridors but made headlines, shaking the very foundation of the NHIS. He was suspended twice during this period, first by the Minister of Health and later by the NHIS board, both times over allegations of financial impropriety. Each suspension was a media spectacle, with debates raging on television and social media about the veracity of the claims. Yusuf, however, vehemently denied these allegations, claiming they were fabricated by political rivals to tarnish his reputation. In numerous interviews, he presented himself as a reformer, someone who was targeted because he dared to challenge the status quo. He was eventually removed from office in 2019, an action he attributed to a political witch hunt. His departure was as dramatic as his tenure, with supporters and detractors clashing in public forums and on the streets. His supporters argued that his removal was orchestrated by powerful individuals who felt threatened by his reformist agenda at the NHIS. They believed that Yusuf was a victim of his own integrity, punished for trying to clean up a corrupt system. Yusuf's controversial past undoubtedly colored public perception of his arrest. The media frenzy that followed his every move ensured that he remained a polarizing figure, with opinions about him deeply divided. While his supporters saw it as a continuation of the witch hunt, his detractors viewed it as long overdue accountability for past misdeeds. The debate over Yusuf's legacy continues to this day, a testament to the complex and often contentious nature of public service. As the legal battle over Professor Yusuf's fate continues, many questions remain unanswered. Was his arrest a legitimate crackdown on corruption, or a politically motivated attempt to silence a critic of the government? Did the government interfere with the judicial process to punish a dissenting voice? Only time will tell what the ultimate outcome of Professor Yusuf's case will. However, the controversy surrounding his arrest has exposed fault lines within Nigerian society, raising concerns about shrinking civic space and the government's commitment to the rule of law. The case has also highlighted the challenges of balancing national security concerns with the protection of fundamental human rights, a delicate dance that continues to shape Nigeria's democratic journey. The world watches as the drama unfolds, waiting to see if justice will prevail, and if the right to dissent in Nigeria will be upheld.